Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the wonderful world of motion. General Motors now invites you to travel the open road, to discover that when it comes to transportation, it's always fun to be free.
Welcome back to the Retro Disney World Podcast. This is Episode 6, World of Motion Part 2, named Stubborn Donkey Part 2. So we're going to be going through the rest of World of Motion tonight, the ride and down into Trans Center. But always, before we get started, we're going to turn back a little bit from the previous podcasts and other ones and go over some corrections and comments that we had come up and some mail that we received. So first up I wanted to bring up is that last month I mentioned the Inside World of Motion. There was a black and white film that was projected right around the Model T scene, right? How that's where it was, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. And I mentioned, I said, I think I know where that's from. It's some sort of special film, and indeed it was. It's in the National Archives. I looked it up, and it's called A Trip Down Market Street in 1906. And what's really interesting about this film is that they hand cranked the film and literally went down the trolley tracks down Market Street in San Francisco. But the other interesting fact is that they recorded San Francisco just a couple days or weeks before the earthquake and fire. So we're going to post a link to it in this podcast article so that you can take a look at that. So you can see it a little more detail of what they were projecting. So with a little, uncovering some history there, it turns out that wasn't any specific piece of random film that Disney chose to project. Turns out it was actually a very historical piece of film. So another comment in terms of the queue areas, we found a video. If you've got 2 minutes of your life that you want to explore and watch people get on to World of Motion, there's 2 minutes on YouTube. We'll post a link for this as well. Just watching people get on in the load area, and you can see it's very empty at the time. There's only a handful of people going in. They're filling up most of the Omnimovers, but there's nobody in queue. But you can see how plain the room actually was. So there wasn't a lot to it.
Did you say that was Did you say that was 94?
94, yeah.
So that's a year before it closed.
Exactly. So you can really see how it started losing its pull.
Yeah. Shout out to Mike Lee from Widen Your World for that one.
Yep.
That's his.
Excellent. So Hal, I've got one for you. Now, we talked last month how when you came up into the sun and then you came into the building as you went up that ramp, you made the turn, and I thought to myself, okay, they did a great job blocking the light, but your eyes outside are still going to be adjusted to the sunlight, right? It takes, a good 2 minutes for your the cones and the rods in your eyes to adjust and swap there. So my question is that, did anybody ever notice out there, or do we have any concrete evidence that the lighting in the first couple scenes would have to be brighter to allow your eyes to adjust, rather than later things would have to be dimmer as your eyes got used to the darkness? So most rides we go in the queue, like in Horizons, you're inside, you have time for your eyes to adjust. But this one, you're adjusted, you go outside, you're blasted with sunlight, and then you come back in. So just a human nature scientific thought I came up with.
That's an interesting question. I know when you would make that transition, it was oftentimes hard to see the feet that were climbing on the walls, and I didn't know if that was partially because the lights were trying to project into the sunlight. That tube did last, I don't know, I'd have to go back to actually watch a video to see how long it was. It was a number of seconds as you made that transition in. It was, kind of lengthy.
Sure.
So maybe there was a certain amount of time that was in there that they felt would be adequate to get your eyes adjusted, because the first scene with the caveman and the foot power doesn't have any projection, but as soon as that's over, there's projectors showing all the different types of boats before they get into the water transport. So
Right.
your eyes would have to be adjusted by that point, which is fairly quick.
Fairly quick, yeah. So I didn't know maybe the scenes would be brighter, and then as you went through the ride, they would get slightly dimmer as your eyes adjusted. But
It's an interesting thought.
yeah, just a thought, because most of the rides you don't go outside for. So, so with that, how too you had a correction from last month as well, right?
Yes, I misspoke. I in some of the older stuff, I thought I had seen some references to the attraction part of World of Motion being called "It's Fun to Be Free," but according to all the guidebooks, it's just called the World of Motion.
Yeah.
So the World of Motion Pavilion houses the World of Motion, the ride, and Trans Center.
So we own up to our mistakes. If we find them, we'll correct them. So, alrighty. So I think that's all the major rewind stuff we had for last month. So let's get into the remainder of the ride. Now, we left off just before we got to probably the most iconic scene of World of Motion, and that is the world's first traffic jam, which never a person, I think, went in there and didn't lean forward or try to straighten their body to look. There was just so much going on in that, right? I mean, it was amazing how much was in there.
Yeah, and also not just the picture that we always see. There was stuff as you were transitioning into that room that was going on the left and right. So, that's easy to forget about. And yeah, that is a section that is certainly packed with detail, thanks to Mark Davis. So as we left the previous scene of the horse and the blacksmith looking at the guy like cranking the back of the buggy up and down on your
and hold on, I should probably say, if you haven't listened to part 1, you may want to listen to part 1 and pause us here. Go and listen to Stubborn Donkey part 1 and come back.
We could just wait. We got,
yeah, you know what? We're gonna sit here. Go ahead. It's about an hour and a half. We'll come back and go.
This is part 2.
Yeah. So that was on the left-hand side with the film, and then immediately on your right-hand side there was a streetcar with a conductor in the front ringing a bell, and I'm trying to remember if there had to have been people in the streetcar as well. And then once you got past him, then you actually saw the large-scale world's first traffic jam. So you had a horse-drawn cart, and everybody has seen this pictures, but I'll just go into some of the details. So there's a horse-drawn cart that's turned over. There's fruit and chickens kind of like splayed out all over the ground. The chickens are kind of in a box, and their heads are going left and right. The fruit is all over the place. There's a farmer that has his the horse by a rope, and the horse is kind of freaking out. He's trying to pull on the horse to like calm him down. Then there's a ice truck to the right hand side, a double-decker bus sort of facing in front of you. There's automobiles to the back left and to the right, 2 different models with like people inside, and they're covering their ears because of all the noise. So, and that's the part of this thing, is the noise of like the bell of the streetcar, people honking their horns, people yelling for them to get out of the way. It's supposed to be just like this cacophony of sound that's like driving everybody crazy. And then down in the bottom by the chickens and the fruit, this is one of those things that they showed in videos over and over and over again ad nauseum.
Yes.
Is this guy like popping up out of the manhole cover, and peeking and looking what's going on, and then like putting his head back down again.
He had that surprised look. Was he reused from somewhere too?
Is it the
same guy again? It is. Yeah, okay. It's the guy in the Leonardo. Yeah.
Yeah, who's the guy in the Leonardo. So
okay.
Yep. That he got a lot of that's the thing. The figure now, even within that section, the figure reuse is pretty amazing, because I want to say they probably used like 2 or 3 figures like multiple times within the same scene, but just with like different hair, different costume, and maybe different body style. They completely changed them around enough that you didn't really notice unless you went through multiple times.
Right. You'd never pick up on it. Now you mentioned the ice truck too. There was the kids chipping away. That always got my grandfather chuckling because we'd go through and he would always have to tell the story of how he used to get ice and I remember the days of the ice box and so it was it was neat to see and whenever I see that picture now, it reminds me of my grandfather.
Yeah, made fun of him, and now you have an entire podcast dedicated to remember when.
Exactly.
See, but that is a great little historical detail gag that yes, that's something that like a grandparent could like relate to their grandchildren, tell them like what that really was, which was awesome.
Yep.
There's all kinds of little things like that. There's kids on sort of like makeshift not go-karts, but like carts that you used to see sort of like in the Little Rascals type things.
Oh, like the ones made out of the wood crate or something.
Right,
like that.
exactly.
Back to the Future.
Or Back to the Future, that's right, yeah.
There you go.
Tons of great little historical details. And there's one detail that confuses me to this day, because if you typically look at like Mark Davis's drawings and the models that they would build from them, it's like those would be translated one-to-one directly in real life. But one thing that I noticed on the model that changed when they actually built it is there is a sign on the front of the double-decker bus, and in the model it says livery. But in the attraction, it says city transport.
Now, was that going to be a Mark Davis joke that there were going to be animals on board and it had become a stable as a result of the crash?
Well, so I had to do a little bit of research because, of course, I just have to do that.
Well, that's what we're paid to do here.
So right, that's where we get the big all our Disney dollars come from.
Exactly.
So livery for buses just meant that it was a private bus service versus a city-run or a government-run transportation
just like
service.
Today with license plate, they say livery on it.
Yeah,
okay.
There you go.
Yep.
So that sort of led to the taxi system, and I guess the private buses were very popular, particularly in England and in the northeastern United States when that started. So
interesting.
But I don't know if people, for that reason, would get confused and then assume that it had something to do with horses, so they changed it.
I mean, if there was a chicken on board, right, and the guy was changing the sign to livery, that would be funny. But
yeah, so I don't know, very very odd little detail there.
Yeah. So that really was the iconic scene. Was that in the center of the building too? Were you kind of no?
It's it probably sat about mid attraction, so I would guess it would have to be close to that. Right. And this room was particularly huge in order to hold all this stuff. This is a very very large room because this isn't like a small scale double decker bus. This is the same size as the omnibus that you'd ride on Main Street, and full size cars and a full size truck and a full size trolley. So this was a big space and a city behind it too, because there's an entire city block built around that.
Right. Yep. I'm just trying to look at the blueprint here to see where that was in terms. Streetcar. Yeah, scene 23. There it is there. It's definitely huge.
So from there, then we kind of make a turn to the right, and we start heading out into the country. And we see a picnic. So now the car is established and people are going out on Sunday drives. And there's a little tableau to the right that has sort of like a man and a woman kind of in the sort of dandy fashions of the time. The guy's playing a mandolin. They've got a picnic lunch out, and there's like a couple squirrels hanging out and watching. And then this is the point where we transition from auto transportation to the airplane. So right as you go past them, there is a large billboard up advertising an air show. And then there's part of the billboard is cut out, and then there's a projection of airplanes flying by. And on a personal note, as a kid, I always liked this because the date of the air show was April 30th, which is my birthday. So I thought it was really cool that there was
15 days from now.
Yeah, so I thought it was really cool that there was like a thing with my birthday in it. And I don't know if do you guys ever look to see if your birthday happens to get used any place in the parks?
I haven't looked, but that's an interesting thing to do.
It is. There's the April 30th date I noticed appears in one other place on like a poster for a ship that's leaving in the Columbia Harbor House.
Really?
So I'm always like, that's cool, because Usually,
So
I
you
never
came.
laugh
Wait,
some
you're
of
telling
that.
you had your birthday, you immigrated here, and then you also went to a county fair and air show on the 30th.
That's right.
So okay.
That's what we do. My family. Oh, and then probably another one of the gags that is they didn't really publicize, but is very memorable. As you passed by this billboard, there was a policeman on a motorcycle sitting behind the billboard, like basically waiting to pick off speeders. So it's again that old kind of gag of like the police waiting behind waiting behind a billboard to like get people on the Sunday drive as they're speeding.
And he looked the part. I'll tell you, that was one character that he just had this kind of stern, he had the goggles on and
Right.
the growl of the motorcycle revved. He looked like he was ready to take off and take care of somebody.
And that face is probably one of the most reused faces in that ride, because that motorcycle cop is also the guy that's the streetcar driver. He's also the surprised guy with the horse. That's the blacksmith. He ends up getting used over and over again. And then he also got moved to the Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland after the ride closed. So there's at least one figure of him on Pirates now.
Still there.
He's Johnny Depp, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Just looks just like Jack Sparrow.
That's right.
It's uncanny.
How did they know back then?
Disney magic. Disney magic. So then after we see that, then we move into like the full barnstorming scene, and we pass a car on the left and a car on the right with like families with kids, and there's a kid hanging out on the running board of one of them with a like a balsa airplane with the propeller spinning.
Was that motor driven, or did they use air? Do you know?
That would have been motor driven.
It was motor driven. I didn't know if they had like a fan off to the side or.
Just for reliability's sake.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Just simple. And then in front of you at that point is a full-size biplane, and there's kind of this flapper girl standing next to this pilot that is done. I don't know. I'd say he's very kind of Walt Disney-esque almost.
He is. He's kind of got that
right?
look. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know it's not supposed to be him, but it's.
And it's the right era for that, right? And he's kind of proud of himself for what he did. Yeah, he definitely.
Yeah, the caricature definitely captures that spirit of sort of that huckster barnstormer of the time, and that guy is one of the few like custom sculpts that was done specifically for that because it is such a specific thing.
So JT, make a note of that and the get you the picture here. We got to put that up there. Make sure we get that in.
The Walt Disney lookalike.
Yeah, I've got you. Send you the image. We definitely will add that in.
Yeah,
it's got the mustache and everything.
That will be in the show notes section.
Now, did the prop start was the prop spinning on the biplane, or did it?
Yeah,
it was going
sure
too,
was.
right? Yeah,
and you hear the noise from that.
Right.
Yep. So then from barnstorming, we kind of quickly go into this this very fast segue then that's supposed to take us from like that time period with automobiles to the current time period. So there's 4 cars in this room, and behind each one of the cars is like a large magazine. And then the magazine, sort of like where an image would be in the magazine, has film running, just like indicative of the time period. And we pass like 4 different General Motors products. So the first car is a 39 Cadillac with a couple married in there, and the famous sort of like I guess hidden Mickey or like little hidden nod to Imagineering is that there's a sign on the back that says "Just Wed," or I think it's written on the side. So instead of saying "Just Married," it's "Just Wed," and of course WED was the initials of Walter Elias Disney, which is the company that Imagineering was at that point.
And just in case anybody's wondering, he was married in 25, not 39. So the date of the car does not. He married Lillian in 25.
It's not his birthday.
Right.
Then we pass a 1947 Buick LaSalle convertible that's got a bunch of college kids in it. And our banjo playing guy is in the back, except he's got a ukulele.
Back again.
Yep. With his nice little hat on. And this is kind of like an odd thing, but I want to say the girl sitting next to him, I think there was definitely a shortage of African American figures at that point. I mean, you see them reused over and over again.
Right.
And the girl sitting next to him, to me, does not look like she is sculpted as an African American female at all. To me, it just looks like a Caucasian girl with brownish skin. So
yeah.
I only call that out because I think it was perhaps a little disingenuous for Disney not to like make that extra effort to do that correctly. But I don't know. I know, and it's very sensitive, so it just seems it always struck me as odd, and I could be completely wrong. So I just put that out there.
That is interesting.
Then there's a 1955 Chevy Nomad station wagon, and it's just packed with like a little league team.
Nomads are sweet.
Yeah, isn't that an awesome little car?
They're worth so much money now too.
Oh, really? Are they?
Yeah, you really can't find them.
Was there something distinct or special about that car that makes it
It was just a 2-door station wagon. That was the big thing. I mean, like that wasn't really. I don't know the specs on them. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, they're worth quite a bit now.
It's still like a pretty large car though, even for a 2-door.
Yeah. I mean, it's got the station wagon back end and whatnot, and it kind of had, as far as I remember, a little bit of Corvette look to it, partially, sort of. But I could be wrong.
Okay, and then the last car is a 1966 Pontiac, and it's loaded down with a family vacation. There's a dog with his head sticking out of the window, with his tongue flapping in the breeze, and it's just packed to the gills with like suitcases and all kinds of stuff up at the top.
Yeah, there's all sorts of crap. I remember my dad. My dad always had this term for any family like that. He'd always call them like the McFarkles. I don't know why he had this name as the McFarkles. And we'd go by it, and he'd like, "There's the McFarkles. They're on vacation," you know. And yeah, it's true. Like there's stuff. The trunk is open. There's crap on the top. There's fishing nets. You know, water skis. Everything's tied down, as you said, Howard. It's but the family looks, they look entertained. They're ready to go.
Yeah, they're happy. They're definitely ready to go in there. And everybody in this scene, it's like they're excited to be like in one of these cars and going somewhere and doing something.
Because it looks like they're packed to spend a week away from civilization at a place like Roy's Cabin.
Like Royce, they could be going to Roy's Cabin.
They could be.
Fishing is there.
Right. Was it there was a line in the ride too where it said we're going. I remember Gary Owen's voice saying we're going to explore the open road or something to that point. Was that right before we got into this?
Yeah.
I think it. Or maybe.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, we may have to check up on that one.
Yeah, that might have been. I want to say that it was at the point where they're at the picnic.
Okay.
No, Sunday. We'll see.
All right, we'll have to ride it again. Now, one other note before we get to the last car here is that, this is the last car. I'm sorry. These were all slightly suspended, right? And the wheels were turning.
Yeah, that's right.
So you kind of got. I mean, there were projections behind them and stuff, but you kind of got the idea that. I don't think they vibrated or moved back and forth at all. But I remember the wheels turning like they were.
You know what I want to say now this is all from memory, so I could be completely wrong, but I want to say that they did maybe sort of shimmy a little bit to the left and the right, and I want to say there also might have been like sort of a projection of light off of a disco ball that was turning. So down below it kind of looked as if there was stuff going, to give you that sort of illusion of speed.
Right.
So the lights would kind of go by. So there was just a little bit of motion to it to give it that little extra look. So, all right. Well, now I have to find it. And that, unfortunately, it may or may not show up in the video. So we'll have to.
Yeah, I've got the video up here. I'm looking, and the cars do kind of look like they're moving around a little bit. It's definitely hard to see. We may have to find a clear shot.
Very, very subtle. So then, so then after that, now we're kind of making that transition from the past to the present and then to the future. And you can't do anything with transportation at Walt Disney World unless you have a speed tunnel.
It's like cowbell. It needs more speed tunnel, right?
Yeah. I got a prescription. I got a fever. And the prescription is more speed tunnel.
Speed tunnel.
Yeah. In fact, this speed tunnels, doesn't have just one speed tunnel, not 2 speed tunnels, but 3. 3 speed tunnels. That's because you can't have enough speed tunnels as far as I'm concerned. And I have a challenge for everyone on the speed tunnel number 3. So I'm hoping there's another geezer like me that might be able to remember something. So speed tunnel number 1 was film shot in 70 millimeter of like an underwater scene, snowmobiling like through trees in the snow, swamp buggy, a bobsled run, a helicopter flying over a canyon, and whitewater rafting.
So I got a comment on the first speed tunnel here, House. So we'd be riding with my grandparents and my grandfather, whenever it was moving fast or like the helicopter, he'd go, wee, right? Because it was like, oh, you're moving, right? He thought it was great. So, and the bobsled was great. The swamp buggy, I remember that one. I remember the underwater one. I'd be like, oh, damn, why is this? You didn't have that same sense of moving as the, and the whitewater rafting, same thing. It was like more of this up and down, but the quick stuff was always exciting. It was similar in Horizons too, right? When you got that. That was another place where my grandfather went when you flew through the V&A and it felt like you were spinning, right? But I just remember being bummed. Like you get in there and you're like, oh man, we're getting whitewater rafting and underwater. That's not what I want. I don't remember the order, but
you don't get to pick your own adventure like in Horizons.
No, this was right? You got where it was in the loop at the time.
All right, so then now speed tunnel number 2. As if that's not enough, let's amp it up a little bit.
That's right.
So speed tunnel number 2 was this weird lava tunnel looking thing, and sort of like these stars like spinning. As if you were in the center of a cylinder and the stars are affixed around you and spinning through. Very weird, very abstract. The lava tunnel thing almost reminded me a little bit of the special effects that were done from the black hole.
Yeah, it did look a lot like the black hole, and I don't know. I have a comment to say when we've talked about all 3 here because I'm trying to piece this all together, but.
Yeah, so I actually need to go back. I want to go back and watch the black hole again and see if maybe they sucked some of the footage out of there or something.
Okay,
you get combat pay for that. having to sit through the black hole again.
Said nobody ever.
But I have a theory on this, Hal. But go ahead, talk about speed tunnel.
All right, and then speed tunnel number 3 was footage from Tron. So
it's Tronish.
Yeah, and there was actually before you got so each one you'd go through the speed tunnel and then there'd be like between a 45 and a 90 degree turn to get you to the next speed tunnel, and then a 45 and a 90 to get you to the next speed tunnel. And this one, the transition here also had some projections bounced off of mirrors of like future transportation systems. So there's these kind of like modern looking cars and buses and things that show up in Trans Center later on. As a transition as you get sort of like from the periphery of the speed tunnel into the middle of it. And then, then they use the footage of sort of like Flynn's descent into the Tron world after he gets zapped by the MCP. So where my challenge to the geezers comes in is I have a very vague recollection of this being added later, and that there might have been something else in speed tunnel number 3 first. And I have a book.
I just looked this up. Tron came out in July of '82. World of Motion opened in October of '82.
Right. It's close. I mean, it definitely could have been. I have a book called The Walt Disney Studios Story, and it covers not only all of the theatrical films, but also things shot for theme parks. And it kind of hints to Tron being an add-on. But I don't know. I don't know if my memory is failing me here or not, or if it could have always been there and I was just excited when I saw it because I was actually one of the handful of people that saw Tron in the movie theater, and I recognized it and thought that it was cool. So I don't know. And so let's find out what your comment is.
Yeah.
Because I'm so curious.
Oh, mine.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've gone through the past, right? And as you're coming around, you're entering the speed tunnel just after seeing what was maybe only 20 years ago at the time. You are then shown video of today, or a film of today, bobsleds and things that you're familiar with in terms of having seen on a daily basis. Then you go through this black hole, these shining stars, and then all of a sudden you're in the futuristic. I'm wondering if those three are meant to be a transition of time travel, because as we know, what we're going to talk about what the final scene was. So here we are today. We're going really fast. We're breaking through the black hole into the time warp. We're now in the future. So that was my thought on the 3 speed tunnels.
That sounds as reasonable as anything else.
Is anything else out there?
You win, sir.
I win? All right. So if anybody else has, if you'd like to write in to podcast@retrodisneyworld.com.
Well, that is one of those Imagineering things, right? They're very big on time travel stuff. It's like presumably when you're on Pirates of the Caribbean in California, you're traveling through time.
Right.
So, sure, why not?
Well, and here's the thing: is what happens in movies when you travel through time? It's always this tunnel, right, of spinning light and all these fantastic ups and downs and roller coaster like things. So, that's what I see. So I'm gonna go with that. I'll put my $20 on it.
I'll buy that.
Okay, fair enough.
All right,
we're good.
So
then, where did it bring us, Hal? Tell us where.
So after you get sucked into the world of the computer, which is not really, I guess, what you're supposed to be doing because it's about transportation, then you get taken to a wonderful, large-scale sort of model of the city of tomorrow called Center Core. And Center Core was.
Why was it called Center Core?
I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna make another assumption. It was at the center of the building. It was at the dead center core of the building. I mean, do you have any other better name to call Center Core?
Seems utterly reasonable.
I could be wrong, but I'm just.
And I mean, assumingly it was the core of the city, and the idea was supposed to just show you a very vague concept of transportation and futurism. So the entire thing was in the dark. It was blacklit, but it was very, very abstract, and purposely so. I think because it was so abstract, you couldn't really pick it apart and say like, no, that can't be true or can't not be true, because it mostly consisted of sort of like liquid neon moving through tubes, which could represent anything from like subways to trains or cars or anything else. There were a couple of hanging sort of like helicopter-y or hovercraft type things that you could see some blinking lights on. I think that was basically like just like a suspended turntable from the ceiling with like 2 arms that radiated out from it. And there was like one model on each arm, and it just kind of turned around in a circle.
I remember almost like these little mini glow sticks shooting back and forth. You mentioned the neon tubes. It almost felt like they were on a wire, and they just got pulled across, like simulating these highways that were just crisscrossing around. It was really cool.
And I remember there were even a couple of things that were just like pin spotlights that would either move up or down on the side of a building, or just kind of like back and forth on like a piece of black metal. I mean, you can't get any more abstract than literally just like a dot of light.
And here's the thing, though, is I was always excited to get in there because it felt like you didn't see it all every time you went through. It was so abstract. There was just so much, and you were in there for so long, but you still never felt like you saw it all.
And in that spot, it's like, I have to say the music was particularly effective.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this weedle, 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 weedle. And it was,
we'll now play for you the real music.
I think that would be much better than us just doing it by mouth, I have to agree.
Now, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Hal, but I believe that the cars rotated too, so that you look into it, right? Because otherwise, everybody would be looking to their left. So the cars rotated so that you could look into the center. If you can imagine, you went around about 160 degrees, 150 something. Yeah, it was pretty close to a complete circle, actually.
Yes, and what this section really did is this took you from the second floor back down to the first floor, so you could get to the unload area.
It had no other purpose.
Yeah, really, it was like, we got to get people out of here.
Oh man, we got them up here. How do we get them down?
And in some ways, this is a throwback to the 64 World's Fair, probably in GM's Futurama pavilion, because they did show like a lot of large scale model cities, and that was a very I think that was a part of the GM pavilion that people really liked back in 64. So I think anything they could do to get a little bit of love from that and bring it into Epcot made a lot of sense.
Right.
So after you come down from Center Core, there's one last effect that apparently people I see a lot of people writing a description of this on the internet, but I think most people are just kind of guessing. It seems like a lot of folks haven't seen this. So um, I remember at the time the publicity was that they pulled Claude Coates out of retirement in order to work on this. Because he had worked on this particular effect in the Haunted Mansion. So if you're familiar with the Haunted Mansion and you're going past the 3 mirrors at the end, okay, this is, I guess, now for the Disneylanders, because in Walt Disney World this is totally different. But in the old Haunted Mansion, you would look past some 2-way mirrors, and then the ghost would follow your Doom buggy. They did a similar effect with your Omni Mover in this ride. So you would come up next to a mirror, and if you looked to your left at the mirror, there was on the other side of the wall behind this 2-way mirror, there were these colored sort of like tops of the cabs of your car that would then take you and your Omni Mover and make it look like it was a futuristic car. So you'd look over to the left, and then you would be inside this futuristic car. And then one of the parts that I distinctly remember that was kind of cool about it, if you know a little bit about the way the Haunted Mansion effect is done, there's basically an oval track that runs behind there, and everything stays basically on one floor, and it just kind of runs in a continual oval. Well, I remember if you watched the cars in front of you, you would actually see the front of the car lift up and kind of go up in the air until and you'd see the back end kind of lift off before it would fall out of the light. So that must have been done on some sort of like vertical belt that went around and around vertically rather than horizontally.
So what was the purpose, to line it up, or?
Well, so if you picture sort of like a conveyor belt, so instead of it doing flat and going around a hemisphere, it was just spun vertically. So they would just kind of go upside down, and then come back on the other side and come down again and go that way. So
interesting.
The shells must have been assumably very lightweight.
Yep.
And that was as good as a system to do it as anything else, and probably took up less space.
Huh.
Because of the way that it's done in the Haunted Mansion, it takes up an extraordinary amount of room.
Right.
In order to have enough ghosts and things to like constantly track and line up with the car.
Just ahead is General Motors' exciting Trans Center. Join us behind the scenes, where we are working to ensure that tomorrow's world will continue to be a world of motion.
GM's exciting showcase of current and future technologies.
I really wonder if there's people that never rode the ride and all they did with the Trans Center,
They
were
just
totally
walked
confused.
in the wrong way, right?
Yeah, because you can do that now.
That's true.
Yeah.
You can go in there and
That's plausible. You could totally do that.
I'm
at
not
us
going
if
on
you've
one
done
of those
that.
fast rides, so I'm just gonna stand downstairs.
I'm gonna sit in the Corvette.
Is that your McFarkle voice?
It could have been a McFarkle. You never know. It could have been McFarkle.
Well, I have to admit that I have a bit of McFarkle in me, because when I was a kid and I was too scared to go on Space Mountain, I would just take the bypass and go to RYCA1, or I'm sorry, go to the Home of Future Living and look at that without riding Space Mountain. So
we've got a real live one right in front.
Yeah, that's a totally plausible scenario that you just outlined. Someone
With your fishing net.
Yeah, someone
So
could
the future
be a big
of
fan.
Yeah. So the future of transportation is here, right? In
That's right.
exact location of
It's right there.
Right. Even though,
as it was spelled out on the wall in a giant neon sign.
if you could miss it.
Yeah. So that was the thing that kind of led you from the exit ramp of the ride. So you'd kind of walk down this long not staircase, kind of this long hallway, and there'd be this big giant neon sign on your left-hand side that kind of worked its way over to a giant head, and then there were projections inside of that head of future transportation vehicles. And I think those ones that I mentioned that I saw on the ride, that's where some of those images showed up again. So that would get you down into the Trans Center. Now, interesting thing about the Trans Center that I just found out over the last 2 days, Imagineering did not build this. They actually jobbed it out to another company called BRC Imagination Arts because they were too busy doing a bunch of all the other stuff at Epcot to have time to work on this. BRC was headed by a guy named Bob Rogers, who was a former Imagineer. He was a film producer for WDI. I guess it was still WED then. And before he worked on this, he did a little film called Impressions de France. So he got well known. Yeah, so he got well known within the organization for doing that, and they came up beautiful. And I suspect what happened was, like a lot of things, like a bunch of the work was getting wrapped up, so they probably released him because he got hired on just to do that one job.
Well, think about it. He must have done a good job. It's the same film is still running to this day.
Yeah, yeah. Literally,
and timeless,
and it's stunning, that film.
Yeah, amazing piece of work.
That is a gorgeous film. I think that's one of the few things that everybody kind of can agree on. I've never heard anybody say that they don't like it. So what happened was, after that was over, Marty Sklar realized that they were not going to be able to get anybody from Imagineering to work on Trans Center. So he actually told Bob Rogers, "Go start up a company, and I'll do the introductions, and you go build this for us. And I'll just tell GM that we're gonna keep a close eye on you, and but you'll take care of everything." And that's what happened. He started his company, BRC Imagination Arts, and he designed the Trans Center. Well, I should say he and his group designed the Trans Center and all the entertainment within it. So there's a couple of things in here that I think are probably some of the most beloved Disney-esque things, and it turned out Disney didn't actually do it. So that was quite a surprise. So after you get out of the hallway, you end up walking between the blades of a giant fan. And that takes you into a section called Aerotest. And the concept here is to be able to see a wind tunnel and the effects of aerodynamics on miles per gallon and car design.
As if slicing people in multiple pieces.
Yes.
had something to do with transportation.
Well, fortunately, the blades weren't moving, so it's not like you had to jump in between them.
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. Go, Johnny. Oh, Johnny missed. Little Johnny's.
Who's next?
Grandma?
Yeah, that would have been a good attraction.
Yeah.
So you walk under this big thing, and then at first you couldn't actually really tell what it was until you got through it and then turned around and looked up and you saw the center of it. So it was kind of deceiving at first. It just kind of looked like a thing sitting in the middle of the way. But then they had another room off to the side with this is the first time you glimpse the Aero 2000, like a version of the concept car of 1995 that they had made. And they do a Pepper's Ghost effect there as well. So you can kind of see like the wind moving on top of it. When they get to that section, there are some control panels that look like something that would end up in Star Trek: The Next Generation, sort of like these backlit things that looked like keyboards and readouts. And there was a little presentation in there that would show you like the drag coefficient of a bicycle and a truck, and then the Aero 2000, and it would show as you improve the drag coefficient that the miles per gallon goes up. So they were actually trying to get people used to the idea of, like, oh, we're going to start making these much more aerodynamic vehicles, which I was going to say, I think it's ironic because at the time, like, everything was very boxy.
Well, remember the Ford Taurus came out and everyone, oh, that's round.
Oh my God.
But it's funny, if people don't know what the Aero 2000 is, if you've seen any pamphlet or any picture of World of Motion, advertising. GM used it ad nauseum, right, on some of those little pamphlets. That out. It was everywhere, so you couldn't miss it.
It's very similar to a Corvette concept they had back then too. There was always the rumor of a mid-engine Corvette, and it looks really similar to that.
Really?
Yeah, if you put the two next to each other, they're very close. But it is a Corvette that never got made either. So
interesting. So that was the first thing that you would see. And then the second thing that you would see after that is probably, I think, people's favorite show, called The Bird and the Robot.
Yep.
And I happen to have the cast member spiel that you would hear as you walked up to that attraction as I was getting ready to. So we'll step into the time machine for a second here, and I'll do my best CM impression.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, General Motors welcomes you to the Trans Center. Our next show, the Water Engine Show, begins across the hall in a minute and a half. Once again, as a reminder, there is no smoking allowed here in the Trans Center. For those of you who have just joined us here in the Bird and Robot Show, the next one will begin in just 60 seconds. Thank you, and have a nice day at Epcot Center. Isn't that,
Very nice.
wasn't that nice that they would
That's good.
wish you to have a nice day?
Wish you not go spend
Yeah.
more money. Use your band somewhere else.
Yeah, very so friendly. So, Bird and Robot. This I think is the thing that most people probably remember because it was very, very Disney-esque in its form. So basically, the premise is to try to demonstrate to people how robots get used on assembly lines within GM's factories. So consisted of two characters, Bird, which was a sort of a bluish toucan in the Tiki Room style, except he had sort of like a Groucho Marx, like humongous eyebrows and a cigar.
Because, a lot of toucans. They're in the South or, maybe in Cuba,
Yeah,
fine tobacco.
Very known. And he had kind of this very rough New Yorkish kind of like Groucho Marxy accent. Tiger! And then Tiger was a industrial robot, which I don't know if this was part of the joke. Like the toucan didn't really pay attention or care about him, but written on the side of the robot was the word Puma. So I don't know if that was a mistake that they misremembered that the robot was called a tiger when it was really a puma, or if that's just indicative of the bird not really caring about him that much.
Or is this a battle between Tony the Tiger and Sam the Toucan? Is this like a battle of the cereal brands?
Yeah, very very strange. So it starts with the toucan basically coming out and introducing himself and telling you that he's got this robot that he saved from the GM factory floor, and he's training him to do something. And they put on this probably about a 6 or 8 minute show. And there's all sorts of little gags, like he tries to have Tiger play like songs on a bell, and this was notable at the time because this was the first time an audio animatronic figure actually manipulated objects around it. Most of the time, Disney went out of its way to make sure things didn't touch each other, so there would be no wear and tear. But in this case, it's like he would play bells. It's like he would try to pick up a donut off of a table, which was a sort of this rock solid like sculpture of a donut. But eventually, using the baton, he would pick it up and then put it back. And he would sort of like pick up a sign, an applause sign, and a boo sign throughout the show.
Now, was it audio-animatronic or was it a real precision robot from GM?
Presumably, it was an actual factory robot.
Okay, so then we give the nod to it. I mean, the accuracy of those things, as we know, is unbelievable. Even back then, for the time, I mean, it's still really, really good. So,
yeah, certainly good enough, and they would have been made probably with much easier to replace parts if there was something that wore out. They could probably get another put in there.
It's interesting that something like that, which really is the core of audio animatronics at that large scale at that time, something so big could move so fluid and so quickly. Yet, a lot of the automatics were still very herky-jerky because of the nature of we couldn't get those components small enough yet. In the early 80s, but you had the technology to be that precise, to be that fluid, but you just couldn't scale it into something the size of a human.
Yeah, and I think the thing that was really distinctive is for something that was an industrial robot, they actually managed to get a lot of personality out of it, just in the way that it moved. Is so really well done.
It would look around you, open its claw or mouth or whatever you want a little bit, and nod its head and turn. It was done really well. It was cool.
Right, and there's a couple like really funny little gags. So like I remember at one point they're going over how some robots at GM have like laser eyes in order to measure parts precisely to make sure they're done right. And he kind of reaches into a bag and picks up these sort of like red goggles, and then turns around and looks at the bird. And then the bird says something like, those eyes don't work. You can't see anything. And then you hear kind of like a shutter click. And then on the back screen, it's like you see a diagram of the bird. And it flashes these bright red letters with a warning bell that says needs cleaning. But they would kind of run you through all the different uses of industrial robots. So on the back screen, you'd see like how they're measuring. It's like they see a robot going to school. And like there's a technician kind of like putting points on it. And he makes some sort of comment about the bird says something like, "The teachers at my school didn't look that good." So you got a nice little sexist thing in there. Show how they're painting, how they pick up hot parts, and it's just really was a nice little demonstration of how that how industrial robotics works, and that was really a lot of people's first introduction into that. And then there's a section at the end where he picks up sort of this metal baton and conducts the Detroit Phil Robotic Orchestra, and they take a montage of film that was shot at a GM assembly plant and very beautifully lit, and put it to like the Blue Danube. The show was originally supposed to run from 2 to 4 years, and it actually ran for 14. Which is really amazing. Yeah. And the bird is actually still around. He's on display at BRC Imagination Arts office in Burbank, and he's still functional. Apparently, they've got like a little joystick on him where you can go up and work him and make him go through his paces. And
that's pretty cool.
It's really cool. And another thing that I found out today is that, this is one of those things where I think I saw this in 1983 and it clicked with me and I forgot it until I found it again. But this is a really interesting thing. So I guess in the contract with GM was written in this clause that any film that they shot that wasn't used in the pavilion could get reused as long as it wasn't competitive to what was going on in the pavilion. So what they ended up doing, Bob Rogers took basically all the outtakes and put together a 8-minute film called Ballet Robotique. And he used the music that was done by the quote unquote Detroit Phil Robotic Orchestra, which is actually the London Symphony Orchestra, and put together this 8-minute short film of robots basically like synced to music. And it was actually nominated for an Academy Award in 1983 in the live action short film category. So a section of The Bird and the Robot almost won an Academy Award.
Crazy. For a sideshow.
Yeah.
In a side of a pavilion, right?
So it turns out a couple of years ago, they actually had that transferred to Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
So I ordered one and I'm waiting for it to show up now. It's like,
cool.
Yeah, I have to see that. So
it's a screening at House.
That's right.
We should mention our side note, our footnote. The other piece of work that BRC did for Disney was the feature animation, the Magic of Disney animation segment at the Hollywood Studios when it opened. So that experience where you used to walk in, see the Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite film, walk through and see those. It was the first time I had ever seen those smoke shade windows that can digitally disappear, and you would see the animators at work drawing Tarzan or whatever they were making at the time, and then go in and see the closing film. And there was one other piece. That whole thing was designed by BRC too. Oh. So that's the other piece of attraction work that they did for Disney.
Yeah, and not only did they design all that, they actually did the animation. Disney didn't do the animation for that section.
Oh, for that for that film, like the film.
You would never would have known.
Yeah, they did Back to Neverland, which is mind blowing.
Wow.
Yeah, and we'll when we get to doing a Disney MGM one, I'll have to dive into some more of that because I'm trying to find out if that was done by the Roger Rabbit crew after they came off of that. I have a sneaking suspicion they hired the group in London to develop that stuff. So, but I need to do some more research to find that out.
Interesting. So we move on. We got the water engine next, right?
Yeah. So that's like this is I think the second most memorable thing.
Yeah.
The water engine show was you'd sort of like step into this theater across the hall, and there were 9 large pistons on the back wall arranged in sort of like a half semicircle. The show used 3 35mm projectors, and then basically it was about different types of engines and which engine might be the engine of the future, which it's funny because a lot of these we actually are now seeing used in production cars now. And these are still being debated. As the characters would kind of be introduced one by one, And as the characters were introduced, one of the pistons would drop, and then sort of the screen would light up in that area. So the characters were internal combustion engines, which were done by kind of like this gruff older cowboy. A flywheel, which was a little girl with like a wind-up car. A turbine flywheel hybrid, which was a football coach. And I guess that would be powered by coal. A coal-fired turbine, which was embodied by sort of like a crusty old miner. A turbine electric hybrid engine, which was Leonardo da Vinci.
Perfect match.
Who just spoke who just spoke Italian during the entire thing. He didn't speak English.
Yeah.
So he's ranting and raving, and everyone's just kind of looking at him. An electric engine, which is done by kind of like this woman in a city. A hydrogen engine, which is done by this kind of weird little Peter Lorre style mad scientist. He's like, it works, I tell you, it works. Horse transportation, which is represented by this sort of hayseed farmer. And then magnetic levitation, which is embodied by this kind of a superhero type. So they have this really fun little open debate about which kind is the best thing. And I think in the end, it kind of ends with the gasoline engine saying like, well, all this stuff might be great someday, but for now, it's still the reliable gasoline engine. So go buy a car.
Well, it's cool to see that there was a lot of forethought, at that time for, electric, hybrid, all those terms, like you said, how that we're coming to today. So, somebody back in the early 80s went through that, was inspired, and is probably working on something now for us, which is kind of cool when you think about it.
Yeah, it's actually amazing, that we tend to think of the car companies as being very stodgy and not moving, but I mean, GM was legitimately thinking about this stuff back at this point. I mean, and they were the first company that came with a electric car, right?
Well, yeah, before they killed it.
Yeah.
The EV1.
EV1, yeah, before the EV1 went kaput.
Lease only from a Saturn dealership.
Yeah, lease only, and then you know what? We're going to repo them all and crush them because, well, that's another show. All right. So we move across the hall a little bit to Concept 2000, right, which had the Aero 2000 that we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah, so I'll let Brian remember. This is the one thing that Brian remembers. So
he's got this,
yeah. Set up for this.
Yeah, a vivid memory of it anyway. It's just one of those attractions that I don't have a lot of scenes that stuck with me. I have a few from inside the ride, but I do have vivid memories of sitting there staring at the Aero 2000. Did it rotate?
Yeah.
Like a pie, like a case of pies in a diner. That's what I remember seeing this.
A record player.
I'll have the lemon meringue. The lemon meringue's looking really nice.
This rotating car straight out of Back to the Future 2.
And then you went on to buy the Aero 2000, and that's your daily driver now.
Yeah.
So yes, it was a silver, sort of like aluminum skinned on the outside. It looked like it was a concept car for I think I have something that says like it's what the scientists from around the world thought the best in class car of 1995 could possibly be. So it was a mid-engine. As you mentioned, as JT said, it was a 4-passenger subcompact car featuring technological advances that may appear in production cars in the future. So front-wheel drive, turbocharged 68 horsepower engine.
Jesus.
Imagine 0 to 60 on that puppy. Woo.
Yeah.
68 minutes.
But on the plus side, it was supposed to get 71 miles to the gallon. Because mostly because of their aerodynamics.
Right.
And then the next feature,
a stalk of celery in it, you'd be down to 70.
What's the next feature you have on your list?
Well, it also had heads-up display. Let's see.
Voice
actuated sliding doors.
That's right. So if we take 1980s technology to actually make that work, that would weigh as much as a modern car, because then there goes your gas mileage.
Exactly.
The amount of wiring for that.
That's right. Hey door, open, open door.
They actually employed a midget in there to do it. That's what happened.
It also had unframed glass windows, and the underside was supposed to be enclosed to like cut down the drag coefficient. Actually, isn't
Yeah.
there some car that does that now, like a Mercedes or something?
Not. I mean, a lot of them do it. What do we hit? It's just enclosed. A lot of cars, you'd be surprised. You can go buy your most basic GM, whatever Ford car, and they have a big pan underneath to smooth out the airflow. So it's very common. Like my wife's Chevy Sonic does that. So
Hmm.
and
Cool.
so that made it, I guess you could say, not the voice actuated doors, but the
Right. And some of this technology did trickle down. For example,
Mhm.
the heads-up display debuted in the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme in 1980.
yes. It's
Mere.
very reliable too. Great system.
Now, now, Howard, this area they eventually got rid of the Aero 2000 in the late 80s, early 90s, right? I have footage here from 91 where there is similar stuff. I don't know if it is the Aero 2000 that we're talking about here, but they show all the different cutaways and this Tron-looking blue vehicle. Was that later on? It was like a two-seater, like a front and rear type configuration, you know?
Well, part of this whole section then is like you would actually do a walkthrough of what they called like the Design 2000 or the Concept 2000 section, where you would sort of see how that car got developed from early drawings to clay models. They actually showed you how they like would build models out of clay.
Right. They'd have somebody's desk sitting there, right? Yeah.
Yep, and then an early CAD system to see like, oh, in the future we'll design cars with CAD, which they actually did. And then you'd work through like different fabrics and finishes, and you'd see like a bunch of different color choices, and it really sort of gave you this idea of like from concept to production, what that process was like for developing a car, which was, it was probably not the most interesting part of it, but to someone who was a car fan, it probably was really interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I see JT raises his hand, so
Yeah.
yeah.
What's interesting though, I mean, I know we talk about the old stuff. This to me reminds me more of Test Track now, like right now today, than it did the crash test version. You design your car, you see what it does. It's kind of back. I don't say we took a step back, but yeah, it's very similar to the current one.
Well, I think I think there's a lot of interesting stories around cars, besides the getting from here to there. But like, yes, how was it manufactured? How was it tested? And I know when they started thinking about what to do with these rides, it's like one of the first things that they always do is they just go and visit like a tons of places and try to get a feel on like, well, what's really interesting and different about this. I think I remember an anecdote where they were saying like Marty Sklar knew more about Ford Motors than anybody else when they were working on the Magic Skyway Pavilion, because he was the one person that actually went to every single solitary department of the company and talked to people. So yeah, I think there's a lot of inspiration that you can get from, and I know that these guys worked hand in hand with GM, and in fact the relationship even continued after this pavilion. And BRC Imagination Arts continued to work with GM for other trade shows and other things, and did stuff with them.
Yep.
So the last sort of second to last stop then is the Dreamers Workshop, and this was just kind of like a hodgepodge of all kinds of different things. So you'd see concepts for vehicles like the Lean Machine, which was and this. Anyone who grew up in my age bracket saw the Lean Machine and thought it was the coolest thing ever. So basically the concept is take a very low to the ground sort of motorcycle, except with a wheel in the front and then two wheels in the back, and enclose it in kind of a bullet shaped case. And then the reason it was called the Lean Machine is because as you turned into a curve, the entire body of the car would kind of tilt to keep your center of gravity low and stable. And this also had a video film that ran with it. I kind of remember it had all kinds of like sound effects and some sort of like weird little animation of like the drag coefficient and the miles per gallon. It would like flash how wonderful the miles per gallon were.
Now, in this area, they had all sorts of little things. I know you've got the Aqua Hotel, Hovercraft Hotel. It had like the elevator deck would bring up an airplane or a helicopter up there. They're pretty, really, really neat, detailed models. So we have to understand that while the focus was on cars, there still was some ocean going, some other transportation methods highlighted, while not in great detail. They did not leave them out. The maglev was the other. I was always bummed that the giant maglev train wasn't going anywhere. It was just static. But what kills me is, and I have footage of this, is that I don't know if they were trying to demonstrate maglev train at the time, but they had this little miniature monorail type train on a slanted track, and some sort of actuator would like knock it up an incline, and then gravity would bring it back. They didn't have any like real true maglev going on.
It's only a model.
It's only look, this isn't real. We're just going to use gravity. But it was kind of interesting. The thing just goes back and forth.
So you'll have to tell me if you have footage of this, because this is one of the things that I remembered. Is like there were these little discs that would levitate, and someone stuck like a stormtrooper action figure on top of one of them.
Star Wars weekend.
You can almost see a little bit of it going on. There's a link further up in our chat here, and you can click on JT's. His eyes are fixated on the screen watching this video right now. But there is the magliner. There's the little guy thing going back and forth, and then there is the you can see a good shot of the magnet going up and down. Magnetic levitation coil test number 146. Do not touch. There were a couple little extra props, in there. So, but a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, and and it had the Royce cabin of the future in there. It was an RV with an inflatable habitat in the back. Take with you the Vanguard Habit Dome.
Sponsored by Vanguard.
So the last part was the original or current cars, right? You could get in and take a look at them, and I remember wasn't there some sort of rotating stage too with big, like, I don't want to say, they were like vertical blinds or something like that. Are they still there? They're still there today.
They had like a similar thing, at least in the test track, like where one car would be there, it'd close, and then it'd open, another car would be there.
Was it like that back then? How? I can't remember.
No, I just remember it was kind of like a huge circular room with a bunch of cars parked in it.
All right.
So everything from Pontiac Fiero to whatever the Corvette model was. You guys saw some other ones on some.
Okay, no, I got one here for you. So this is from '91. I just mentioned the '91 film. Well, JT, make a note. Let's post this link to. This podcast is going to be filled with links to videos, but there was a Geo Tracker tricked out as a boombox car. This thing, ridiculous is not the right word. There's got to be a better word. But I have the stats here. I videoed the stat sheet. It says it's a show vehicle version of the Geo Tracker with modified exterior and sound equipment. The boombox tracker is not intended for production, just in case you were wondering.
Because no one would buy it.
No one would buy it. It's an electric purple with chrome. 12 three-way speakers, 2 large subwoofers, 4 Electro Voice EV tweeters, 2 equalizers, 1 tuner amplifier. Okay, now here we go. Here's the technology. Fiber optic lights and sequential LED. Now, don't forget, it's L.E. lights around the back perimeter. 15-inch chrome wheels. 15-inch for those cruising.
That's hot.
JT, you may know what this is. What is it? PPG paint with decals. I don't know what
PPG is. Just a company. They make Pittsburgh plate glass. Yeah.
Look at that. Okay. 3 large chrome stacks for sound resonation, custom windshield spoiler. All interior and exterior dimensions are essentially, I love that, are essentially the same as the stock.
So, I mean, why would you put that if you had no intentions of producing it? Who cares?
Because there's a stuffed Mickey hanging out of the top.
It did attract a lot of attention.
It did with the flashing. Yeah. So you'll have to watch it. I forget what mark it is in the video, but
what this whole department of the ride reminds me of is just like an old auto show. They don't do this so much at auto shows anymore, where it's like loaded with cars that you're never ever gonna own. But that's kind of what even this tracker is. It's just junk that I mean it's just
somebody
in all honesty,
woke up with an idea and
it's just waste. It's just even like these weird concept cars, like somebody was paid thousands, millions to design this whole thing, and it's nothing, absolutely pointless.
Yeah,
I want to say there was like at one point they blew out the wall when you would come down that ramp before the turbine engine, and they would put a concept car over there, and I seem to remember something called like a Sidewinder or some sort of like dune buggy. Like green concept car.
Really?
hanging off on the side
I've
over
got
there.
some yellow concept. I think it looked like said Sidewinder on it, but it may be different. We'll have to
Maybe
check
that's
that
it.
video.
Maybe that's
Yeah,
it.
it's check that video. So
Again, it's been like 30 years, so
exactly.
I'm reaching here.
Yeah. Well, with that, guys, that is the end of the world of motion. It's fun to be free, right? And we're ready to move on.
Yeah. Oh, I have one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have one additional memory that I have to get out
then
there.
it'll be fun to view.
Just because it's so distinct. So I remember. So when Epcot opened, I was probably like 10 or 11 years old, and I'm trying to nail down exactly what the date is, but I'm thinking this thing happened to me probably sometime between like 83 and 85. But I still have this very distinct memory of being in the Trans Center, and they had a demonstration of touch screen control panels. So you'd be able to control your radio and your like climate control system with this. It was literally like a green screen CRT or like a yellow CRT, but just that idea of like of futurism, of being able to do touchscreen stuff was so new then. And I remember I tuned it to an Orlando radio station, and back to back it played "Steppin' Out" by Joe Jackson, and then "IGY What a Wonderful World" by Donald Fagen. And at that moment, I felt like I was literally like living the most futuristic life possible.
So does anybody else remember that? Is there pictures of that LCD screen, that touch screen, that CRT?
I'm gonna have to go. I have not found that again. I think that ended up in a Corvette at some point, because they also had like the control panel, like an LED control panel that I think ended up in the Corvettes. Where
Corvettes had digital dashes, but
yeah,
the controls, I don't know if they had the LCD readout or not. But
all right, I promise I will go try to hunt that down.
So, well, now it's fun to be free, right?
Boom.
Now
we're done. Well, we're free. We're free. So,
it's really
fun.
I
hope everybody enjoyed our trip back into the world of motion. How awesome job and great research on that stuff as always. So, appreciate that. So, if you have any additional questions, you can write into us at podcast@retrodisneyworld.com. And with that, JT, you've been running out to the mailbox. You're excited. We've got some stuff coming in. What we got this month?
The mailbag was overflowing. We had a lot, and I've got two to talk about today. This is a normal one and a bonus.
A bonus. Oh.
So the bonus is a special one. I'll do the normal first. The first one is from a guy named Kurt Shimala, something. Kurt obviously loves the podcast, he says. He talked about the memories we did at World of Motion. He actually, and I kind of randomly see him on the Instagram machine. He is Disney Viewmaster on Instagram, so he's got a pretty sweet little page there, and we like things here and there from each other. His question, though, and we've talked about this before, just not on air, but he wants to know. Locate, if possible, the actual room where John Lennon signed the Beatles' breakup papers at the Polynesian. And Brian, this is your area. Go.
The area being referred to as the Beatles area.
The Beatles area. Yeah,
that's
you've stayed in the room, haven't you?
I haven't stayed in the room, but John visited in if I have the time right, it was 1974, Christmas week 1974. And he was there with his son Julian, who he had over the Christmas holidays, who lived in England but came over for the holidays, and his girlfriend May Pang. He was on a break from Yoko Ono at the time, and so they're down there. The other three Beatles had been in New York to sign the papers sometime before Christmas, and John said, well, look, here's where I'm going to be. Just send them to me. So they FedExed them down to him, and he sat in his room at the Polynesian Resort and signed the papers. May Pang took a photo of him while he was signing them in his room. May wrote about this in her book, which was published in 2009, I think. And included the photo, and there are a couple of photos that float around from that trip of John in the parks. May also appeared on another podcast and talked about this. I have a mutual friend who's very close to May. I've met May before, but it was before this story had come up and the questions had come up. But I had asked a mutual friend who goes to several parties at May's house every year if she could ask her if there's any chance they actually remember, if she has any keepsakes or anything as to which room they stayed in. She does not.
It's
So they
already
don't
answered?
remember.
That's it.
Yeah, they do not. But
Dang it.
But she did say on the podcast appearance that they had a VIP guide while they were in the parks, and even back then, and to how I think you know the building, the one building at the Polynesian is the is just private VIP suites. It's only got a dozen rooms or whatever in it, but it's got the 2-floor suite and the presidential apartments and everything else that are there. They more than likely stayed in that building.
Yep.
What's the building called now?
Well, maybe we could make this an extra prize. Should we make this an extra prize?
What's that?
Well, we know what it's called now, right?
Yes.
It's called Tonga, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the first listener to write in and tell us what that building was called back in 1974, we're gonna find an extra prize. How I know you know what it is.
Podcast at retrodisneyworld.com.
Yeah.
Ready,
And
set,
now,
go. Pause your podcast and do it now.
Exactly. You got to get going on it if you know the answer to it. Also, too, maybe we'll even do another bonus here. What is unique about that building, other than the fact that it has
John Lennon stayed there,
and no
right?
There are no windows and no doors. Yeah, well, that's the second. So the first person to write in with the name of the building back in 1974, and the first person to write in with the correct answer, what is unique about that specific building at the Polynesian Resort, we'll get you out some special prizes.
Wow.
I didn't think we'd. What do you know? I thought this would come up at the Polynesian episode to be determined, a date to be determined.
Well, maybe by then we'll have the room number.
We'll know exactly. We'll broadcast from there.
I want a disgruntled 70s Polynesian worker who's just got a grudge to take out just to let us know. They know somebody knows who took him towels or something.
That's right. Somebody's got to know about that.
If you ever become independently wealthy, if you just stay in all 8 or 10
you can say we did it,
in that building, then you were in one of the rooms.
Well, I was going to say, if we can find enough photos and then look at the positions of the trees and things outside, then maybe we can determine that way.
Determine where it was.
This is the new holy grail.
This is it. We're still looking for surfers, but we're looking for John Lennon's room too. So
maybe John Lennon surfed it right into Roy's cabin.
He could have. So JT, what else did we get this month? We got
my bonus. This is from Harry Cook. Harry Cook wrote just a simple sentence. He says, "Hi, do you have any retro Tigger autographs? Let him know." And I'm sure he's meaning Tigger from the parks, right? We would guess that. And kids walk up and get autographs. And I went to my archives and I went to my Xerox boxes of junk, and I found a actual Tigger autograph. So Harry, you name your price, it's yours. I got it. If you'd like to fund me staying in John Lennon's room, if it means that much to you,
that's right.
It is yours. I'll send you the whole book from the 80s. I don't know if that's retro enough for you, but when did they start signing autographs? Let's be factual here. Does anybody know?
Good question. I mean, the film of me in the 80s that nobody's signing anything,
Then my first time I asked for an autograph at Disney, I walk up to Pooh Bear. This has scarred me. Pooh Bear doesn't have hands. He just stared at me like I was an idiot child, and I'm like, they don't do autographs. These autograph books are a sham. So therefore, my first autograph experience was very traumatizing. Yeah. So I don't know what the year was they officially started signing autographs, but Pooh Bear did not in the 80s.
There we go.
So that's the viewer mail section. Harry, you got your bonus.
That's right.
I do have the autograph. I'm holding it ransom for you right now. If you have more questions, would like more autographs, podcast at retrodisneyworld.com.
Excellent. Well, it is that time now to move on to Audio Rewind. And let's first take a listen to last month's Audio Rewind teaser puzzler and see what we hear. All right, so the correct answer for that was actually from Space Mountain. Is this the one that you recorded?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay, so it's one of Hal's private stock. And so the winner this month, and the winner, we're going to get to the prize here in a second, is Andrew, and I correct my, sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Toffoli. Congratulations, you have won the 30 centimeter 3D printed in silver. There it is. I'm holding it up for our video feed.
I've
here,
seen it,
everybody.
but I haven't seen it.
This is a Spaceship Earth 30 centimeter container. It has a screw top on it. You can store all sorts of things. This was printed on my very own 3D printer with a silver filament, so it looks just like Spaceship Earth.
That's sweet.
Yeah, so that is this month's prize. We're going to get that out to you as soon as we get your address and get that all set up. So this month, Brian, you've got the prize. Something back from the 90s, huh?
Yeah. For those of you who follow me on Twitter at Brian P. Miles, I am given to flights of posting photographs and artwork from calendars that the Disney parks they started, but my best historical knowledge is 1981 was the first year that they actually put out a Walt Disney World calendar. And with 12 months of the year, and each month is a different photograph from inside the resorts. Whether it's in a theme park or whether it's one of the resort properties or river country, water parks, that kind of thing. So I have a spare duo 1993 WDW calendar, which has some very good shots. And so that is our prize this month, is a 1993 Walt Disney World calendar. And if you're like me, in my office presently, I have two 1987 calendars because 1987 has the same set of dates that match up with 2015.
So it just blew my mind.
Yeah, if you're wondering, we did this research beforehand. If you're wondering, if you go to whencanireusethiscalendar.com,
no way,
you will find out that the 1993 calendar can be used in when, Brian? What are we looking at here?
Well, the next available year is 2021, but then 27, 38, 49, 55, 66, 77, and 83. We will be dead for about half of those years.
Yeah.
But
pass it on.
But you know what, Brian? We got to say this is a prize and a gift that keeps on giving.
It's like the Fruit of the Month.
Fruit of the Month Club. Every 11 years, approximately,
like
give it
George
or take.
Costanza visiting
9,
his parents every 11 years.
Exactly. So let's take a listen to this month's puzzler, and if you are one of the correct entries, we'll pull all the people who submit the correct answer. We'll put in a random drawing and pull out one of them who will win the 1993 annual calendar. So let's take a listen and go from there.
Beyond the contemporary resort, across Bay Lake, is the Fort Wilderness Campground Resort. There you'll find river country, a Disney recreation of an old-fashioned swimming hole with rope swings, rapids, a giant twisting water slide, and the world's largest outdoor heated pool.
All right, so if you know the answer, email us at podcast@retrodisneyworld.com. And
that's a tough one this month, Todd.
It is a tough one.
So
now, don't forget too. Even if you don't win the prize this month, you will be entered for the big prize at the end of the year, which will be pulled in December 2015, and that will be the reproduction Paul Hartley map from wdwmap.com. Now, for this month, please do get your entries in by May 10th. All right. With that said, let's move on to film restoration. This section of the podcast is brought to you by Pixel. For a thoughtful once-in-a-lifetime gift, contact Pixel to create pristine digital transfers from your old home movies, photos, videotapes, or slides. Now available in the cloud with the Reflectera app. To get started today, visit Pixel.com or call 1-800-557-3508. You can also get some more information at retrodisneyworld.com/imageworks. And we give you an additional 10% off coupon there and offer free restoration of your Disney home videos. And films, I should say. So this month is another eBay pickup, and we're going to do the film restoration portion a little bit different here. We're going to get to that in a second. But this is another film we picked up on eBay. I titled it when I released it, Magic Kingdom Architecture and Landscape 72 Style. the person behind the camera did a really interesting job with the film because, once again, there's not a lot of people in it. It's really more of what's going on, the architecture. There's some footage inside buildings, which you don't often see. A lot of cameras had light, need a lot of natural light to function properly back then. And, really, really interesting piece because there was a lot of different aspects of the park that were filmed that you normally wouldn't see. And we're going to talk about those things. And also some very rare things that don't exist anymore or have changed over time is in here too. Now, a lot of time when we did these film restorations in the past, we would kind of let you guys play along at home, and we were jumping all around. So what we thought we'd do this month is do a little different. We've all watched the film ahead of time and kind of have some additional comments, and we're going to kind of step through those without jumping all over the place. So we'll see how this works and go from there. So I'll kick it off. There was a couple points in the film where I noticed is that the water all around the entire thing is just dyed really, really blue. Rivers of America, swan boats, moat in front of the castle, everything like really, really nasty blue. And the 132 mark, if you go there, you could see the steamboat just kicking up the blue dye. So do anybody know when they stopped that?
No.
It's really kind of artificial looking.
I know it happens from time to time. It's like when they rehab the Jungle Cruise, they'll do that.
Yeah, but it's more of a dark greenish blue now, right?
When they first dump it in, it's very blue, and then within a short period of time, it like settles back down again.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah,
murky. Huh, interesting. So, Brian, you had a couple early on in the film too, right?
Yeah, about a minute and 15 seconds in, there's the flaming torches down at the ground level, right outside the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse, and it's notable because it's in an area that ultimately leads to the Jungle Cruise, and that was an area that the swan boats used to sail by. And has since been covered. They then became remote control boats, the Buona Bob's boats, and then they ripped that out. So now it's a stroller parking area. Yep. So obviously those torches aren't there anymore. But if you look at the shot of it there, the torches were lit right by where the spinning wheel is that provides the water buckets up to the treehouse, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah,
I think some of those torches still are there, right? It's just the trees have grown up so high around them.
They're not still lit, are they?
Well,
I thought there's a few that are still lit.
Really?
See, when I used to go, we always used to joke about taking hot dogs in the park with us and roasting them on top of them.
That I gotta say.
So I mean, if they're there, I can't see them. I mean,
all right.
Through this sea of, but that's true with a lot of the stuff that you see in these early videos. That, and the next thing that I noted was, I've seen there's postcards and photos and slides from the time, the vistas, the shots towards the haunted mansion, so barren back then, and the mansion up on a hill, versus today with the canopies and the expansion of Liberty Square and the fruit and vegetables market there, and all the stuff that's built up around it that kind of obscures it. Back then, it was just a wide open shot, and it was the haunted mansion up on a hill
and blue water
with a fence, and a little brick wall there.
Yeah, well, and at this point, Tom Sawyer's Island doesn't even exist. So
right.
Yeah, that's at 125. You can see it's a great shot.
That's at the 125 mark. And then when you get tired of looking at that, it cuts over to a Minuteman, a walk-around character, sitting on one of the benches. I think he's smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, I know.
He's not.
I think he's got a cigarette in his hand.
Right before he comes on at 138, though, there is a very, very interesting couple interesting frames. The Liberty Tree is there. Now, if anybody knows the history and the legend and the truth of the Liberty Tree, it was an oak tree, some sort of oak tree found on a Disney property. They picked it up and moved it. Now, what's interesting is if you know where to look, you could probably still see the scars today of this, but you can see wires holding the tree up,
Oh yeah.
And you can see the holes that they drilled directly through the trunk in order to lift the tree and put it down in Liberty Square.
Wow, they did.
So
They're big holes in
yeah,
it.
they're much bigger than I thought. So this was not a root ball type extraction. So it was there was no spade that came and lifted.
Let's see if this works.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously they had somebody who knew a bit about trees to say where to put those holes.
What's with the creepy banjo guy at 139?
Yeah, he's like practicing or getting ready to come out.
Yeah, he's just, and then it cuts away real fast. Like, oh my god, he spotted me. It's very creepy. Like he looks like this was the first murder in Disney.
He's getting ready to get that lounging Minuteman.
There's a lot of odd
smoking the cigarette.
Yeah, and then it jumps to a. Isn't there an internal shot? Did we get to the antique shop before the Hall
I think
of
at 144 they must be in the silver ship shop, and then at 153 or 154 they go into it's a little bit here 156 156 they go into old world antiques
for about 7 frames.
About 7 frames, and then right before they go in there is a 2-second shot of the queue for the Hall of Presidents, and I'm telling you that wait is an hour if it's a minute. You see this long line of people in the queue outside the Hall of Presidents.
That thing is huge. I mean,
was anybody new as president then, or did it just open?
Well, the park had just opened. Nixon they were in the middle of the 72 election, so Nixon had been president for 4 years, but they used to add the figure. But the current president didn't start speaking until Clinton in '93.
Right.
Okay. So, why does the facade look like plywood on that Hall of Presidents? It looks.
I was just about to point that out too.
Yeah, there's a good reason for that.
There is.
Really?
Yeah, somebody commented on the page, is that it was the construction of the Hall of Presidents front entrance porch.
Huh.
Which is interesting. So that's why it looks like. And is plywood.
So there wouldn't have been the covered entrance back then. It would have just been flush with the building, and then the 100-degree heat would come, shining down on the cast member there, waiting to let people in.
Right.
So
you can see how that
Minuteman.
So the just the part of that canopy or was was completed, and they obviously have to.
It's one of about a dozen examples of in the first few years of them realizing, hey, we built a theme park on the surface of the sun, and
oops,
and we need to add shade and covers, and they did it there, they did it on Dumbo, and Hal can probably think of 3 or 4 other things where they either added trees or coverings or canopies or.
Oh yeah, I mean the canopy in front of the Haunted Mansion.
Yep.
The canopy over the Mad Tea Party. Gosh, there were so many things that got tacked on later on, and they're like, "Oh, what do you know? It's hot in Florida."
Hey, people got third-degree burns on Dumbo. We might want to
fix it.
Yeah.
So that's the person's name on the website was Johnny. So thank you to Johnny.
Thank you, Johnny.
For pointing that out.
For that bit of interesting.
Exactly.
If you don't have anything between here and 349,
my next one is 252.
All right, well you shoot there.
All right, I got an interesting one at 252. I just got I got a kick out of this, and the reason being is that, as we all know, the Skyway closed, and for a long period of time they positioned somebody out there when the Skyway closed, and it's closed, even though we knew it was closed for good, and the Skyway was closed that day. There's a cast member standing out there, basically turning away guests. And if you pause right before the 251 mark, it's really really hard to see. It almost looks like there is a sign that says sorry. This attraction is closed or something. It almost sounds like this.
Sorry, folks. We're closed for 2 weeks to clean and repair America's favorite family fun park. Sorry.
I just had to add that in.
Wagon Queen family truckster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when a little bit past that at the 313 mark, there's actually a shot from that chalet going down the path, so you see a little bit about what the path looked like there. And then there's
film.
Yeah,
Man.
There's construction over here, more construction in the Liberty Square area.
Yeah, there is
at 316, and
Yeah. Now, my understanding that again, we're going to give credit to Johnny here, as he wrote that was the construction of the Liberty Square patio area, with a great view of the storage shack that became the Fife and Drum snack bar.
There you go. Yeah, there's a lot of shots around there of Sleepy Hollow snacks and the other
A lone
vending
Minuteman
areas.
at 322.
Yeah, there's a couple of times you see wandering.
He's just like standing out there,
Yep.
like, are the British coming?
Starting, ready to go.
They're not even breathing heavy.
So this one is for Hal. If you get to the 346,
Hold on, just 1 second though. I got it.
Okay, go ahead.
At 3:25, the Fife and Drum is out. How many times have we seen the Fife and Drum? Right, they're always out. At 3:25, they're out. The Florida rain comes in, and then look at 3:27. They're all playing underneath.
Get to the awning.
Get to the awning. Get underneath. Retreat.
So if you get to 347, there's a few seconds a shot of I think it's the Liberty Tree here because I see the holes still in it. There are all these lanterns hanging from it.
Mm-hmm.
Are they still there, Hal?
They should be. Yeah,
They should be. Yeah.
Don't they represent the original 13 colonies? I believe there should be 13 lanterns.
Yep, that was an integral part of the movie Johnny Tremaine. That a lot of this kind of ended up getting pulled from.
The tree at the time was very sparse. You can see there's not a lot of growth on it. There's not a lot of leaves. So they're probably not as prominent today as they were then.
Yeah. And I want to say there is some story I believe about them grafting a second tree onto that tree.
Okay.
No kidding.
Yeah,
to help fill it out.
They actually drilled branches onto it, didn't they?
I don't know, something I think it was even like a different species, but yeah, it's way more filled out now.
So yeah, if you see that, I mean, they really stand out more so than they obviously do today. It just that jumped out at me.
Yep.
You have anything before 415, Todd?
No, my 452 is my next mark. So.
Okay, well, 415 is the first good shot of Center Street, which Hal liked to point out. You get a couple of good shots in this film of stuff that has since been filled in with the Emporium shops on the one side, and on the other side they just took the flower market out for no reason.
And that's West Center Street for those who are interested.
Yeah, look at
Horse Barn.
Starting at 412, it's like there's this little upstairs, like with wrought iron and little tables, just evocative of like something going up there, which is awesome.
Reminds me of Disneyland, actually. In New Orleans Square.
Yeah, there's little shots of the art festival. It's like you see the Chinese laundry.
Yep.
There's like all these great little things that got lost over the years.
Wow.
And it really, people say, you just lost this little piece, West Street and the East Streets. But you have to understand, when you walk down Main Street then and you look to your left and right, it felt more expansive. It didn't feel like this flume of people, right? That's all it is now. It's just a pathway to get people. And now it's, it's just, I don't know. It's lost a lot by enclosing that Emporium in there.
So at the 4.5 minute mark, you see back when the candy shop used to actually had candy makers working in the window. I believe he's making peanut brittle here.
Yeah, it looks like it.
I think it's peanut brittle. He's got two big scoops, and it looks like he's making peanut brittle. And then they cut to a really cool display in the candy shop window of various Disney little figurines that they've then put candy either in their hands or their mouths, and different items that they sell, which is a cute little display there.
Oh,
I gotta give props to the photographer. He really selected a lot of neat things to squeeze into.
Well, he clearly either attended with people he didn't like or by himself.
Well, there's this grumpy guy that comes up a couple times. He's wearing a yellow shirt.
Yep.
You can see him. He kind of comes up a couple times. So
I like it at 440. He's kind of like macking on some of the Main Street girls.
Like, oh,
man with the yellow hat.
Look at that. They're not showing any ankles. Nope.
Now, is your next shot there the barbershop, Todd, or is that Is that something you noted, or was it the firehouse?
No, it was 452, which would
Yes.
would have been the barber shop.
You're
Yeah,
in the barber shop.
inside the original barber shop. And right at 453, you've got one of the tour girls. She looks back toward over her shoulder to the camera.
Breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah. So she's what, 20 something there. So this woman is
collecting Social Security.
Yeah. So she's put her time in.
Email us at
yeah. Let us know if that's you. So yeah, I think the next one was inside of the firehouse at 459, which you can peer into today, right?
Yeah, you can still peer in there. After 9/11, it was filled with what was it, badges or something from all over the country.
Oh yeah.
Firehouse,
and it became like a firehouse themed like store. You could get like all kinds of firehouse badges and like.
Yeah, but they would let like any firefighter who was coming from around the country to visit the parks, they could bring. I think they were badges or patches. And they added them to the wall inside the firehouse.
Yeah, I remember
that.
It's
a neat thing they were doing for about 10 years. But the last note I have from this film is at the 5:02 mark, you see Mickey appear, and as Todd referenced a little earlier. You had one of them freak Florida rainstorms that pops up for a half an hour. Mickey, the character, is walking with an umbrella in his hand, a closed umbrella, which you would never see today. I mean, two things. One, the attendant would have the umbrella if they even had one. Right. And two, they would obviously just pull the character right off the street if it started to pour rain. But in 1972, Mickey's out there by himself, unattended, carrying his own umbrella.
Out there stumping, just handling it.
Now, to go along with that storm, look at 514. They're leaving the Magic Kingdom. There's a guy at 514 selling balloons, and the things are near horizontal, blowing towards the exit. Now, if you continue as they exit, and this guy did not stop taking film until he was practically on the monorail. He goes past some women again. He's got some characters. But as they're getting on the monorail around, I think we're coming up to around 5:30, 5:28, the wind is whipping the trees. So I think they were exiting stage left there. But my last comment on the film is from 5:30 up to the end. Look at that view from the monorail, looking towards the train. You cannot see the train anymore when it goes. It's all filled in now. Yeah. So look at that view that you've got, of the railroad as you go by. So,
wow, great stuff.
Yep. Now I got to go back and recolor correct this. Brian, you want me to go back and correct each individual frame by hand, right? Just to make sure that this color is
pencil
perfect.
sketch them by hand.
That's what you said you would do.
I will.
You weren't happy with the color correction.
No, I wasn't. It was a tough one to restore. Actually, the color
was
really off. So I'm gonna go back through and see if I can do this again. Now people are going to say too, oh well, the color on the blue and the moat will look different. No, that's the way it was. It's just that I don't know. There's a little too much yellow, I think, in this. But
I found one more thing of note before we leave. This is for the total nerds at 2:15. This is like one of those like big controversial things in Disney history that I think like Dave Smith had a fit about or something. So at 2:15, there's a sign for the Tinkerbell toy shop in Fantasyland, and Tinkerbell is one word instead of two words. And I think that was something that like later on someone came in and was like, Tinkerbell is always two words, and they had to like change the sign around.
How dare you, got to put a space between that. That's it. There we go. Proof.
Woe to the people who tweet or talk on social media about Doctor Who and say DR period instead of spelling out doctor.
So he's not an actual MD?
No, that's Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Oh, man. Well, with that, guys, we have come to the end of another Retro Disney World podcast. But we do need to decide, what do we do in the next episode? Now, we've been to Epcot. We've done the preview. We've done some stuff over in the Magic Kingdom. We've done some resorts. What do you guys think next? Should we go back over them? Actually, we really haven't done any specific attraction in the Magic Kingdom yet, have we? Other than Tomorrowland, right? We did Tomorrowland.
We just did a full attraction for 2 episodes. Can we do something else?
So we do have something else. Well, I have a personal appeal to the pictorial souvenirs and ephemera and souvenirs and that type of stuff. That's, I can talk about a lot of that stuff. But what else do you guys have?
Well, I was going to say, like, maybe this is a chance for us to not only talk about our favorite souvenirs, but some of our favorite souvenir stores, too.
All right. So why don't we make it a souvenir, ephemera, paperwork. Bring them if you got them. Let's do that. We'll do show and tell. And bring your pile of stuff. Talk about your souvenirs, the stores. Somebody's going to mention the candle shop in Lake Buena Vista, I'm sure.
Can we get a call out for people to tweet at us their souvenirs?
Absolutely.
Email us their souvenirs. Yes, send us your stuff.
JT will be tweeting out and bothering all of our followers to send it stuff. We want to see pictures. We want to see what you've got. And old stuff, right?
Yes,
89 and
Instagram us,
prior. We don't want to see
everything.
Disney MGM stuff, Jay.
And if you have anything that's particularly interesting and valuable, be sure to tweet us your address and when you're not home.
Right, exactly. If you have that, we'll be sure to remove it from the notes. So, all right. Well, with that, we've got next month's set, episode 7. And let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Again, Pixel.com for sponsoring the film restoration portion, and as well as Chad Lincecum with www.map.com. So if you're interested in sponsoring us, feel free to email us at info@retrodisneyworld.com. As always, you can find us at RetroWDW on Twitter, and we're on Facebook as well as Retro Disney World. With that said, JT, Hal, and Brian, give them your Twitter handles, and we'll sign out.
You can find me on Twitter at Brian P. Miles.
You can find me, Hal, at Go Away Green on Twitter.
I am at LS1JT on Twitter, and then follow us on Instagram, RetroWDW.
That's right. We got some good pictures coming up. So, all right. With that said, we'll see you next month with episode 7. And Brian, take us out.
Until next time, remember how easy it was to learn your ABCs? Thank the Phoenicians.
It's fun to be free, to be on the move, and travel with these or whatever you please to do. Doing all there is to be done, 'cause it's fun, it's fun to be free. It's fun to be free.
Yes, our world has indeed become a world of motion. We have engineered marvels that take us swiftly over land and sea, the air, and into space itself. And still bolder and better ideas are yet to come. Ideas that will fulfill our age-old dream to be free. Free in mind, free in spirit, free to follow the distant star of our ancestors to a brighter tomorrow.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.